I'm Jim Brady. I'm here with my uncle Nick Brady. Louis Farrelly's done a wonderful job arranging all this and trying to get this history, a better history of the club put together, and he's put together some questions, so I'll kind of go down the list and some of the stuff I can remember. He asked first about when I first got involved with the club. I was here because my parents were here, and my grandfather, Nick's father, before that, and my great-grandfather, which was Nick's grandfather, who neither one of us ever met. I think he passed in about 1927, but he sort of found his way into what was Somerset Hills Country Club before he passed. And so one of my early memories here was really the tennis program and the kids' summer camp that was run by, I think Bill Banks was here when I first started playing tennis, but Bill Sturgis, who came in, and I think my dad had a lot to do with finding Bill Sturgis and bringing him up here to Somerset Hills Country Club. So the typical kids' summer camp here would be, you'd start over with the tennis, and then they'd ship you over to the golf, and Perry Molinaro was the pro over there then. So I'm not sure they really wanted us playing golf. They used to put out a couple barrels that were about 3 feet high and had an opening of about 1.5 feet in the top, and they'd say, well, just hit the golf ball into the barrel, and we'd all sit there and whistle golf balls all over the place. Nobody could hit it into the barrel, and then we'd all go back to the other side of the street and play tennis with Sturgis. So that was sort of the summers around here, and there were some very good matches. I remember, and Nick probably remembers Gene Scott when he came out here with a bunch of the pros, and they used to put on some exhibitions here. I think that was probably in the late 60s, thereabouts. And I remember my dad and Nick playing a lot of their matches against Hyde and Baker at the end of the season for who was going to win the men's doubles. I will say this, that Nick and I both started playing golf after college, and somehow, in my case, I think it was right place, right time. We both won the men's golf championship and the men's tennis championship. So I'm not sure if anybody else has done that since. I think there might be 1 or 2 people, but that was quite something. Good. So I do remember, though, after college, coming up here, and I started playing more golf, and the extent of the golf beforehand was really Perry's summer program, which all of us tried to avoid, and I think that was by design in the club with a lot of the older members. I don't think they really wanted the kids on the course in the first place. So, but I started playing here more after college, and as I got going on it, I remember seeing my Uncle Nick one day, and he said, you know, Jim, you're playing more and more golf. You're going to play at more clubs, and what you're going to come to appreciate about Somerset Hills is what a good everyday golf course this is. And I started looking at it from that perspective, and I must say that, you know, here 40 years later after college, that's probably what I appreciate most about Somerset Hills Country Club. I think we're now a top 50 course, and to be able to come up here and just go out and play 3 holes, 5 holes, 9 holes, 7, 18, whatever the number may be, it's truly unique in that regard, and just the way that the sort of casual atmosphere of it. So anyway, in the late 80s, I started playing out at the National Golf Links of America, and I was thinking that the relationship really between the National Golf Links and Somerset Hills, and Tom Doak, who's the consulting architect here in his firm, in talking about the National Golf Links, which was built in 1911, said that changed golf course architecture in America. And if you look at Somerset Hills from when initially having 9 holes over at what is now the Lake Club, and they couldn't expand that, and then having built the current course in 1918 with Tillinghast, I think the National Golf Links actually had a huge impact on what is here today. And what I've come to learn is, over the years, took over as green chair in about 2002, and have been on the green committee since 1990, is really how unique this course is and the way that the golf course architectural community feels about it. You've got 17 of the original 18 greens. I think Doak has gone so far as to say they are the sort of the wildest greens that Tillinghast ever built. And when you get into talking to people like Crenshaw, who's an honorary member here, who we had on the green committee, they're very much about preserving what is here, and that's what we've really done over the last 20 years, starting with the golf course mission statement and the Doak group who've been here since.
What is the mission statement?
The mission statement was it's funny, when Doak showed up here, so in 2002, after John Hart's passed, DeWitt Alexandre took over the board, and he asked me to run the Green Committee. I really didn't want to run the Green Committee. I had young kids at the time. We just finished up building Hamilton Farm. I've been on the Green Committee since probably 1990 with Stu Christie brought me on. At that point in time, he was brought in to make sure that the Curtis Cup actually happened here. He brought in Bob Dwyer, or the USGA had a lot to do with bringing in Bob Dwyer. And so Dwyer spoke in this room, I think it was at the beginning of the 2002 or 2003 season. John Dana was involved at that point in time also. And I remember Dwyer talking about how much he enjoyed coming to work every day and how he felt that he was basically the keeper of the Mona Lisa of golf here. And I thought about, that makes a lot of sense. And so when we got Crenshaw on the Green Committee, I used to send him the agendas, and he was down in Texas, and we'd talk every once in a while about what we're trying to do. What we really needed to do at that point in time was there were a lot of compliance-related issues here. For the time I've been on the Green Committee before that, there's a lot of architectural discussions where John Tedman and Frank Hannigan would, go at it, and about who knew more about Tillinghast. Hannigan clearly did. But we got out of the golf course architecture business altogether. We wanted to get this place compliant. There wasn't, it just needed to, it was tired. The course wasn't doing well. The facilities were up to modern day standards. So we got all that done, and then we pivoted from that to the golf course architect. And so Crenshaw came up and he played in the Boys and Girls Club. I think it was in 2003. And Jim Lamb and I spent the evening before with him, and we put together aerials on I should say Ron Kennedy's firm did, on ledger-sized sheets, which took the 1940 aerial, which is the earliest we could find, declassified military aerials, and at that point it's the 1995. This is before Google Maps and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. And we went through every single hole with Crenshaw, and he was just immersed in looking at this and the difference between the holes and that sort of thing. And so the next day we put the assistant superintendent on his bag in the Boys and Girls Club and said, here's what we talked about, and when you're done, go back and write down everything you said, which he did. So while he was out writing, Jim Lamb and I were talking to Crenshaw in the front driveway here as he was leaving. We said, we're at a point now where we've gotten the compliance stuff behind us, and we'd really like to focus on a golf course architect. Would you consider taking the job? And he thought about it, and he said, yeah, I'd consider it, but we're not going to do it. And he said, and the reason we're not going to do it is we don't have enough business up this way, and it wouldn't work for you, and it wouldn't work for us. So I said, well, who are we going to get? And he said, there's only one guy. I said, well, who's that? He said, Tom Doak. And I knew a little bit about Doak, not a lot of it about Doak. And about a year and a half later, after we've been trying to reach out to Doak, he was on his way out to I think the U.S. Open was coming to Shinnecock, but he was on his way out to Sabonic, which he was designing at the time. And he came here in the summer of 2004, and the first thing he said was, I seem to remember I haven't been here in a while, I seem to remember you had a little bit of an issue with the first tee and the third green. And I said, yep, we definitely have that. I said, we've cut down all the trees so you can actually see the ball coming in now. We never see it before coming into the third green. And so we had all these carts lined up and ready to go around with him. And he said, no, I'd rather walk. And he had about 3 or 4 golf balls, and we walked the entire course with him. And he sat there, and he would roll golf balls and stuff like that on the greens. And then at the end of the day, they had some time. He brought his associate, Brian Slonick, with him, and Brian's been the person who's been on the ground here ever since. He said, we're interested in the job, but we want you to write a golf course mission statement first. So this was not their first rodeo of coming into a club and as a consulting architect. And it was really one of, I thought, the best things that this club has ever gone through, because it involved the green committee, the golf committee, the board, and we came up with this thing in October, I think 2005. I've got to go back and look at it. And then the following spring, they started here in earnest. And they said, you know, what we're going to do here is, this is all about mowing patterns. And what we're going to do is we're going to, imagine this as being an estate on the Burnsville Mountain after World War I or World War II, where everybody's coming back for the first time. You're pulling the sheets off all the furniture to see what's there. He said, that's what we're going to do here. And so that's really what took place here for a number of years, which is really the mowing patterns. And you can see it when you start to compare. We've since just done another aerial exercise where we looked at what is there now relative to what was there in 1940. Yeah. There were never plans for this place. Everybody says, where are the plans? Well, Tillinghast didn't do plans. He did everything on the fly. Wow. And they say, well, what about Ridgewood? They've got plans. And those aren't plans. Those are as-builts for that he did up there. So anyway, it's a real gem, and I think we've done a good job of preserving it, and I think the golf community appreciates that also. You only have one green here that's not original. It's the 10th, and I remember going around with Doak and with Slonick, and we were playing, and I kept asking the question, what about number 10? And Slonick said to me, he goes, Jim, that's phase 8, and we still haven't hit phase 8 yet, but I think it's been very, very smart by the way they've done things.
When you looked at the overviews of 1940, where was the 10th green?
You can actually see it. It's in the fairway. It still sits there. It's a shorter par 4. So it's kind of like number 4. It's got a lot of slant to it from back to front.
Yeah. Oh, fascinating.
And I'm not sure what year that was done. I hear 30s. I don't know if you remembered when they changed that thing around.
10th green?
Yeah.
In the 30s?
I don't know if it
You're talking
I don't
about
know
your
if
30s.
No.
How many years apart are we?
You and I are probably not quite 30 years apart.
Yeah, 30 years apart.
Yeah.
But, you know, you should really rely on Jim more than me to give you some of the history, how the club functioned and went together, because I was sort of affected by the Second World War, where Dad was in the South Pacific, and he, you know, our whole family, you know, I really only paid attention to Somerset Hills after he got out in about 55 or 6 or something like that. I can't remember the exact date. Kaleidoscopic, if you have been alive 93 years as I have. But anyway, it's always been, the club has always been the center of my activities, my activities in this area. But I started off as a tennis player, just like Jim. And the guy that I spent a lot of time with was Bill Banks. I don't know whether you knew him or not, Jim, but he was a terrific guy and a very talkative and imaginative guy, but only a fair tennis pro, I would say, in terms of his knowledge of tennis. And so I switched from, I was at college, I was on both the tennis and the squash team there, but I never played the Yale Golf Course, which is one of the great golf courses, I guess, in the East Coast. So, but I've always regarded Somerset Hills as a club that was I can't remember what it is today. Maybe you would all know it's number 56 or 7 in the country in terms of being ranked by the
I think it's 56.
56, I think it is. And I paid a lot of my golf. Well, as I say, to go back, jump back a little bit, I learned from scratch, as probably Jim did. And I had a wonderful time doing it because I used to, trying to catch up on the golf thing, I used to, when I commuting into New York, where most of my life was, I had a business job in New York with Dylan Reed. And I used to, if I missed the train going into New York from Far Hills, then I'd race like here and catch the train in Burnsville. But it was that kind of a life. But I really spent a lot of time trying to learn golf here.
Yeah.
And so I've appreciated it from that point of view. And of course, skip forward, I'm sorry if this is a little kaleidoscopic, but it's hard for me to put the dates right in the right time, and you really should rely on Jim for the kind of thing that you're thinking about in this memoir you're trying to put together. But I spent a lot of time away from home. I played tons of rounds at Seminole. I played tons of rounds at Pine. I was a member of Pine Valley. I spent a lot of rounds out in California with the 2 great courses out there. And so I saw all these other courses, and I even played again, my memory's leaving me. I played with the guy in Ohio who was at the great
Nicklaus?
What?
Jack Nicklaus?
Jack Nicklaus. I played Jack Nicklaus's course with him and saw how he played golf. So, and I played a lot of pro-ams with Olin Brown, who's got some background down here. I can't remember.
Luis was a member. Luis, his father was a member.
And so the only reason I make this differentiation with my slight differentiation with Jim is that my experience really was away, although I played a lot of golf here, I played an awful lot of golf away, and including the wonderful course in Washington, D.C. when I was in the government. And so it's a wonderful club, men's only club. So these courses are great courses, but when you look at Somerset Hills, it struck me when I first saw it that Somerset Hills was 56 or 7. It's pretty much maintained its relationship too, I think. So while playing here, my focus was also out of the other great courses in the United States, and a lot of these other courses spend a lot more money on their programs than we have here at Somerset Hills. But it's a classic course, and Crenshaw is another guy that I ran into here. But from the memorability standpoint, I think that really Jim knows so much more about it than I do. He would be the guy you want to rely on to get a person you want to rely on to try to build us a body of experiences here.
Well,
But
we've got both of you, so this.
yeah, no, I'm glad to be here, but I just say the thing that struck my eye was how could this gem of a golf course, Somerset Hills, maintain itself, in the competition when you think of the money that was being spent around all over the United States on golf courses. And, the budget here was a tenth of that, and yet it's ranked up of the top 10 and courses being created all over the United States, which with a lot of money, brand new ones, with just tons of money in it. But my family relationship, to skip back to family relationship, has always been here. But it was in my case as a father of 3 boys and a daughter, and myself, and from the social point of view, I didn't spend a lot of time here, to be honest with you. We were, the boys were all growing up, and I was just using it as a way of, I love competition, and this here was this wonderful golf course. As I say, I used to come over here at 6 o'clock or 5:30 in the morning whenever the dry light came on, and I'd play the golf course and then catch the train into New York. So I'd get up at, Kitty, my wonderful wife, put up with that I did, and I'd bust out the door, and then, you know, and off I'd go to play Somerset Hills, and, you know, and so.
That's great. 6 in the morning, that's
Yeah,
good.
oh yeah, as soon as daylight hit, daylight hit, I was on the course.
Yeah, who were some of your partners for the men's tournaments?
Here,
Yeah,
I think really only members of my own, and I'm trying to think, who did I play with? My brother-in-law, Reuben Richards, and I'm trying to think of my main competitions, I think, were in the club championship, you know. I mean, the people I played were Bobby Johnson, Skipper Haynes,
yeah.
who I actually, I think he was either state champion or going to be the next year. I beat him in the finals here. So mine was not a social relationship really with Somerset Hills.
Yeah.
I mean, I came over here, but when I came over here, my thinking was not golf at all. You know, I may have been on a few of the committees, Jim. I can't remember, but I've always had a great interest in the club because it's been such a mainstay of this community here.
Yeah.
So any way I could help on that score, I've tried to do that, but nothing that of the integral nature of Jim's past is really we both we're in such different eras, you know. But
Did they have, when your kids were growing up, did they have the summer camps, the clinics for golf, clinics for tennis? Because today that's a big deal, but
I really can't answer that question directly. If they did, Kenny took care of it. You know, I was, you know, I mean, I'd you know, my kids grew up being hockey players rather than golf players. I don't think there's any of them that are, you know, in Jim's class anyway, you know.
yeah.
Anthony might have done the kids' camps. I think it was kind of a late 60s. Yeah, late 60s, 1970, that's when it was starting. So Nick's older two, Nick and Chris, were probably not part of that, but I would say Anthony and Kim were very much a part of it.
They were,
Yeah.
well, how Nick is,
Anthony was 2 years older. Anthony was 2 years older than me.
but
Kim
roughly
was
the
2
same
years
age
younger than me.
category.
Yeah, right. But I remember Anthony being in that summer programs here also. They had a bunch of